Imagine opening an old drawer and finding a stack of cash your parents saved decades ago. It looks thick, heavy, serious. Then you realize it can barely buy a smartphone today. Nothing was stolen. No crime happened. No one broke into the house. And yet, something was taken. That missing thing is trust. Not trust in a brand. Not trust in a bank. Trust in the idea that money remembers effort. Inflation doesn't just raise prices. Over time, it quietly edits our shared memory of value. And once that trust erodes, it doesn't come back easily. This matters right now because inflation isn't new, but our relationship with it is changing. For most of modern history, people believed money was boring but dependable. You worked, you saved, you waited. The future rewarded patience. That belief is cracking. Let's talk about how inflation slowly alters long-term trust. Not in theory, but in real life, and why the damage lingers long after prices calm down. Start with something simple. Promise. Money is a promise. Not written, not signed, but widely accepted. When you accept money, you're accepting a delayed reward. You're saying, I won't consume now, I'll consume later. That delay only works if later still feels fair. For centuries, this trust was anchored to something physical. Gold, silver, land. Even when paper money arrived, it carried the ghost of those anchors. People didn't trust the paper. They trusted what it could be turned into. But modern money works differently. Today, money is confidence moving at scale. Numbers in accounts. Digits on screens. Promises layered on promises. This system only survives if people believe the numbers will mean roughly the same thing tomorrow as they do today. Inflation challenges that belief, not suddenly, but persistently. Here's the quiet trick inflation plays. It doesn't announce itself as betrayal. It shows up as inconvenience. Coffee costs a little more. Rent nudges upward. Subscriptions quietly reprice. You adapt. You always do. At first, inflation feels manageable, almost forgettable. That's why it's dangerous. Because trust doesn't break in one moment. It thins. Think about how long-term trust is built. It's built through repetition. You save money. Years pass. You use it. It works. You repeat this cycle enough times, and saving becomes instinctive, cultural, inherited. Inflation interrupts that repetition. Not dramatically, subtly. Your savings still exist. They're just smaller than expected. Not gone. Disappointing. And disappointment accumulates faster than anger. Here's where the system gets uncomfortable. Inflation doesn't hurt everyone equally, and people notice. If you earn wages, inflation arrives early. Your paycheck lags behind rising costs. If you own assets, inflation arrives late, sometimes never. Prices rise. Debts shrink in real terms. Assets inflate with the currency. So two people living in the same economy experience two different realities. One learns that saving feels pointless. The other learns that borrowing feels smart. That divergence changes behavior. When trust in saving erodes, people don't stop thinking. They adapt. They chase speed. Why save for 10 years if inflation eats half the reward? Why wait if tomorrow costs more? Spending moves forward in time. Risk appetite increases. Speculation becomes normalized. Not because people are greedy, but because patience stops paying. This is where inflation quietly rewires values. Long-term thinking weakens. Short-term optimization takes over. And once a society shifts from patience to urgency, it doesn't easily reverse. Let's talk about the math nobody feels but everyone lives with. If inflation averages just 5% per year, not extreme, not dramatic, money loses about half its purchasing power in roughly 14 years. Half. That means a teenager watching their parents save learns a lesson without being taught. They learn that time is an enemy to money. That lesson sticks. This is how inflation alters generational trust. Parents who believed in saving raise children who believe in movement. Move money. Rotate assets. Stay ahead. Never sit still. The system rewards velocity over stability. Ironically, this creates more fragility. Because trust is what allows systems to slow down. Without it, everything accelerates. Now zoom out. Governments don't experience inflation the way individuals do. When prices rise, tax revenues often rise too, automatically. Incomes increase nominally. Sales taxes collect more per transaction. At the same time, old debts become cheaper in real terms. So inflation quietly repairs government balance sheets while straining household ones. This isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's survival. But people notice outcomes, not intentions. And when people sense that the rules bend differently depending on who you are, trust erodes further. Here's the irony. Inflation is often justified as temporary, transitional, necessary, and sometimes it is. But trust operates on memory, not explanations. Even after inflation slows, behavior doesn't reset. People who lived through high inflation don't forget it. They price fear into decisions for decades. They prefer hard assets. They distrust long-term contracts. They expect currency to decay. This is why countries with inflationary pasts struggle to rebuild monetary credibility. You can fix numbers faster than beliefs. Now let's contrast hype with reality. Official narratives say inflation is a technical issue. Supply chains, energy prices, interest rates, and that's all true. But none of that explains why people feel uneasy even when inflation falls. Because the damage isn't just economic. It's psychological. Once people internalize that money is unstable, they stop treating it as a store of effort. It becomes a hot object. Hold it too long and it burns. That mindset leaks into everything. Careers become transactional. Loyalty declines. Long-term planning feels naive. Not immoral. Naive. This is how inflation reshapes trust beyond money. It teaches people that systems can change faster than promises. That lesson spreads. Trust in pensions. Trust in institutions. Trust in timelines. All weakened by the same quiet force. And here's the uncomfortable part. Modern economies are built on future trust. Loans assume future stability. Pensions assume future purchasing power. Governments assume citizens will keep believing. Inflation pulls on all of these threads at once. Not enough to collapse the fabric immediately. Enough to thin it. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in an economy where numbers might stabilize before confidence does. Where inflation can fall, but trust stays cautious. It leaves us asking harder questions. If money can't reliably store effort, what replaces it? Assets? Skills? Networks? Speed? And if everyone is forced to outrun inflation, what happens to those who can't? Inflation doesn't announce the moment trust breaks. It reveals it slowly, year by year, purchase by purchase. By the time people say they don't trust money anymore, the shift already happened. So the real question isn't whether inflation will go up or down next year. The real question is this. Once a society learns that time weakens money, can it ever fully relearn patience? Or does it spend the future forever trying to stay one step ahead?